Ambassador Elena Vasquez was drinking her morning coffee when the message arrived. The transmission came through every screen on the ship at the same time. Red lights flashed. Alarms rang. The computer announced that humanity had received its first official communication from the Galactic Council. Elena set down her cup and walked to the bridge of the ESS Defiant. Her crew was already there, staring at the main screen with wide eyes. The message floated in the center, written in perfect English. Someone or something had translated it for them. The message was long. It was full of important-sounding words. It talked about the supreme authority of the Galactic Council and the ancient laws of the Thousand Worlds. It warned the primitive species of Sol 3 to prepare themselves. They would soon stand before the most powerful governing body in the known universe. They should feel honored. They should feel afraid. They should understand that their tiny planet was nothing compared to the great civilizations that ruled the stars. Elena read the whole thing twice. Then she looked at her crew. They looked back at her. For a moment, nobody said anything. Then Communications Officer Darnell Jackson made a strange sound. Coffee came out of his nose. He tried to stop himself, but he could not. He started laughing so hard that he had to hold on to his chair. "I am sorry," he said between breaths. "I am so sorry. But look at their symbol." Elena looked. The official seal of the Galactic Council showed a creature with 17 tentacles. The tentacles were arranged in a pattern that was clearly meant to look scary and powerful. But to human eyes, it looked exactly like a cartoon octopus wearing a very bad wig. "It gets better," said Lieutenant Chen from the science station. Her voice was shaking. "I translated some of their names. The leader of the council is called the Supreme Arbiter. His actual name is Vrex the Luminous." "That sounds serious," Elena said. "It translates to He Who Flatulates Thunder." The bridge went silent for exactly 2 seconds. Then everyone lost control. Ensign Petrova was the first to fall out of her chair. She was laughing so hard that no sound was coming out. Sergeant Major Okonkwo, the biggest and toughest man on the ship, was wiping tears from his eyes. Even Dr. Yamamoto, who never laughed at anything, was making small, squeaking noises. Elena tried to be professional. She was the ambassador. She represented all of humanity. She needed to show respect for alien cultures. But then she made the mistake of looking at the rest of the message. The Galactic Council had included instructions for the proper greeting ritual. When humans arrived, they would need to perform the sacred greeting of submission. This involved raising both arms, spinning in a circle 3 times, and making a specific sound with their mouths. Elena watched the demonstration video attached to the message. The sacred greeting of submission was the chicken dance. It was exactly the chicken dance. The same arm movements, the same spinning, the same clucking sounds. Somehow, an ancient alien civilization had invented the exact same silly dance that humans did at weddings when they were drunk. Elena lasted about 10 seconds before she joined her crew on the floor. For the next hour, nobody on the Defiant could stop laughing. Every time someone calmed down, someone else would say, "He who flatulates thunder," and it would start all over again. The ship's doctor eventually declared a medical emergency because 3 crew members were having trouble breathing. When Elena finally pulled herself together, she called a meeting. The senior staff gathered in the conference room. Everyone's eyes were still red. Everyone was still smiling. "Okay," Elena said. "We need to talk about this seriously." "With respect, Ambassador," Okonkwo said, "I do not think that is possible." "I know, but we have to try. This is first contact. This is the most important moment in human history. We are about to meet alien life." "Alien life that does the chicken dance," Darnell added. "Yes, alien life that does the chicken dance. But they also have spaceships that can cross the galaxy. They have technology we cannot even imagine. They have been running a government of 1,000 planets for longer than humans have existed. We need to take them seriously." Dr. Yamamoto raised her hand. "Ambassador, I have been studying their biology based on the images they sent. The Supreme Arbiter's species appears to move by waddling. Their bodies are shaped in a way that makes walking with dignity physically impossible." Elena closed her eyes. "Please stop. Also, when they are angry, they puff up their throat sacs. It makes them look like bullfrogs. Very large, very important bullfrogs, but still bullfrogs. I am begging you." "The warrior species that guards the council is called the Drachneth. They are 12 feet tall and covered in scales. But their eyes are on the sides of their heads, so when they try to look intimidating, they have to turn sideways. It looks like they are posing for a photograph. Elena put her head in her hands. Around her, she could hear her crew starting to shake with silent laughter again. This was impossible. How were they supposed to take any of this seriously? Humans had spent centuries imagining alien life. They had pictured terrifying monsters and wise beings of pure energy. They had imagined first contact as a moment of fear or wonder or both. Nobody had imagined that aliens would be goofy, but that was what they had. The most powerful civilization in the galaxy was run by a waddling frog person named He Who Flatulates Thunder. Their sacred ritual was a party dance. Their scary symbol looked like a cartoon with bad hair. Elena took a deep breath. She stood up straight. She looked at her crew. "All right," she said, "here is what we are going to do. We are going to travel to the Galactic Council. We are going to represent humanity with dignity and respect. We are going to be professional and serious and show them that humans deserve a place among the stars." Her crew nodded. They straightened their uniforms. They put on their most serious faces. "And if anyone laughs," Elena continued, "I will personally throw them out of the airlock." Everyone agreed this was fair. 3 days later, the Defiant left Earth orbit and began its journey to meet the Galactic Council. The crew practiced keeping straight faces. They studied alien customs. They prepared for every possible situation. They were not prepared for what came next. Nobody could have been. Because as ridiculous as that first message had been, it was nothing compared to what was waiting for them at the station Paramount. Humanity was about to learn that the entire galaxy was, somehow, even funnier in person. The Defiant came out of hyperspace near the largest structure any human had ever seen. Station Paramount was the size of a small moon. It floated in the darkness of space like a metal flower, with petals made of docking bays and stems made of transit tubes. Lights covered every surface. Ships from 100 different worlds flew around it like insects. Elena stood on the bridge and tried to feel impressed. She was impressed, truly. This was amazing. This was proof that humanity was not alone. This was everything her species had dreamed about for thousands of years. But she could not stop staring at the welcome banner. Someone had hung a massive sign across the main docking bay. It was written in 100 different languages, including English. It said, "Welcome humans. Prepare to be humbled by our greatness." Below those words was a picture of the Supreme Arbiter. He was standing with his arms crossed and his chin raised high. The pose was meant to show power and confidence. But because his species had very short arms and very round bodies, he looked like a penguin who was upset about something. "Do not laugh," Elena said to her crew. "Nobody laugh." "I am not laughing," Okonkwo said. His voice was very tight. His face was very red. "I am having a medical episode. That is different." The ship docked with a gentle bump. Elena gathered her team and walked to the airlock. This was it. The moment of first contact. The beginning of a new era for humanity. She took a deep breath, put on her most diplomatic smile, and stepped through the door. 12 alien species were waiting for them. The Glorvians stood at the front. They were 7 feet tall, with legs like stilts and bodies covered in ceremonial armor. The armor was beautiful. It was made of some kind of shining metal that reflected every color of the rainbow. It was covered in decorations that were clearly very meaningful and important to their culture. The decorations looked exactly like rubber ducks. Elena blinked. She looked again. No, she was not imagining it. Every piece of Glorvian armor was covered in small yellow shapes that looked exactly like the toy ducks that human children played with in bathtubs. They were everywhere. On the shoulders, on the chest, on the helmet. One Glorvian had a rubber duck right in the center of his forehead. "Do not," Elena whispered to her team. "Do not." Behind the Glorvians floated the Kethmari. They were beings of pure thought, or so the briefing files had said. They had no solid bodies. They existed as clouds of energy that moved through the air like ghosts. Each Kethmari was surrounded by a glowing aura that represented their psychic power. The aura changed colors based on their mood. It looked exactly like a mood ring from the 1970s. Lieutenant Chen made a small sound. Elena grabbed her arm and squeezed hard. More species filled the docking bay. There were tall ones and short ones, fat ones and thin ones, species with too many eyes and species with no eyes at all. Every single one of them was doing their best to look powerful and intimidating. Every single one of them failed. The Vrexians had 4 arms, which they crossed in a way that was meant to show disapproval. But their faces were shaped like surprised cats, so they just looked startled. The Dramini were covered in sharp spikes, but the spikes were bright pink and wobbled when they moved. The Threll had deep voices that echoed through the bay, but they were only 2 feet tall and had to stand on platforms to be seen. Elena felt her smile becoming painful. Her face muscles were working harder than they had ever worked before. Behind her, she could hear her crew breathing in short, controlled gasps. Then the Supreme Arbiter arrived. A platform descended from the ceiling. Music played. Lights flashed. Smoke machines created dramatic clouds. It was the most theatrical entrance Elena had ever seen. And in the center of it all stood Vrex Telominus, he who flatulates thunder, Supreme Arbiter of the Galactic Council. He was magnificent. He was powerful. He radiated authority and ancient wisdom. He also had to waddle down from his platform because his legs were too short for stairs. The waddle took about 30 seconds. Vrex Telominus tried to make it look dignified. He held his head high. He kept his throat sack deflated. He moved with careful, measured steps. It did not help. He still looked like a penguin walking across ice, a very determined penguin. A penguin with important business to attend to, but still a penguin. Ensign Petrova suddenly announced that she needed to use the restroom. She ran back into the ship. Everyone could hear her laughing through the airlock door. The Supreme Arbiter reached Elena and stopped. He puffed up his throat sack until it was the size of a basketball. This was a sign of dominance in his culture. To humans, it made him look like he had swallowed a balloon. "Humans," he said. His voice was deep and serious. "You stand before the Galactic Council. We have ruled the stars for 10,000 years. We have seen species rise and fall. We have judged the worthy and destroyed the unworthy. Now we will judge you." Elena nodded respectfully. "We are honored, Supreme Arbiter. You should be afraid. We are very impressed." Vrex Telominus seemed satisfied with this answer. He raised his short arms and clapped twice. The other aliens moved into formation around him. "Now," he announced, "you will perform the sacred greeting of submission. This will show your respect for our authority. This will prove that you understand your place in the galaxy." Elena had practiced this. Her whole team had practiced this. They knew what was coming. It did not make it easier. The aliens began the greeting first. They raised their arms, they flapped their elbows, they turned in circles, they made clucking sounds with their mouths. 1,700 years of galactic tradition, and it was exactly the chicken dance. Elena's team joined in. They flapped and spun and clucked. They did it with completely straight faces. They were professionals. They were diplomats. They represented their entire species. Lieutenant Chen's face was turning purple from the effort of not laughing. Sergeant Major Okonkwo had tears running down his cheeks. Dr. Yamamoto was biting her tongue so hard that she would later need medical attention. But they did it. They completed the sacred greeting of submission without anyone breaking down. The Supreme Arbiter nodded with approval. "Good," he said. "You have shown proper respect. The Council is pleased." Elena bowed her head. "Thank you, Supreme Arbiter. We hope to prove ourselves worthy of—" She was interrupted by a sound from behind her. It was small. It was quiet. But in the silence of the docking bay, everyone heard it. It was a giggle. Darnell Jackson slapped his hand over his mouth, but it was too late. The damage was done. Everyone turned to look at him. His face was bright red. His eyes were watering. His whole body was shaking with the effort of holding back his laughter. "I am sorry," he managed to say. "I am so sorry. It is just the rubber ducks." He pointed at the nearest Glorvian. The Glorvian looked down at his armor. Then he looked back at Darnell. His face showed confusion. "The sacred symbols of our warrior ancestors?" the Glorvian asked. "What about them?" Darnell opened his mouth. Then he closed it. Then he opened it again. "Nothing," he said weakly. "They are very nice, very scary. I am definitely humbled." The Glorvian nodded, satisfied. The Supreme Arbiter made a sound of approval. The welcoming ceremony continued. But Elena had seen something in that moment. When Darnell had pointed at the armor, when the humans had struggled to control their faces, the aliens had not understood. They had seen red faces and watering eyes and shaking bodies. They had thought it was fear. The Galactic Council thought humanity was terrified of them. They thought the rubber ducks and the mood rings and the penguin waddles were working. They had no idea that humans were laughing at them. Elena realized in that moment that this was going to be the strangest diplomatic mission in human history. She was absolutely right. The Supreme Arbiter was not satisfied with just the greeting ceremony. Humans needed to understand their place in the galaxy. They needed to see true power. They needed to be properly humbled before they could join galactic civilization. So he ordered a demonstration. The human delegation was led through the winding corridors of Station Paramount. They passed through markets filled with alien goods. They walked under sculptures that celebrated ancient victories. They saw technology that made their own achievements look like children's toys. Elena tried to focus on these impressive things. She really did, but the universe seemed determined to make that impossible. The Glorvian guards marched beside them. Their rubber duck armor clinked with every step. The Kethmari floated overhead, their mood ring auras shifting from blue to green to purple. A group of Threll officials walked in front of them, their tiny legs moving very fast to keep up with everyone else's normal walking speed. Finally, they reached the Grand Arena. It was enormous. Thousands of seats rose up around a central fighting pit. Aliens of every shape and size filled the stands. Screens floated in the air, ready to broadcast what was about to happen to every planet in the Council's territory. The Supreme Arbiter stood in a special box high above the arena floor. His voice boomed through speakers that made it sound even deeper and more impressive. "Humans," he announced, "you are about to witness the greatest warrior in the galaxy. The Drachneth Slayer has never been defeated. He has killed creatures you cannot imagine. He has won battles that would drive lesser beings mad. Watch now and understand what true strength looks like." A gate opened at the far end of the arena. The Drachneth stepped out. Elena had read the files. She knew that the Drachneth were big. She knew they were covered in scales. She knew they were considered the most dangerous fighters in the known universe. She was still not prepared. The Drachneth Slayer was 12 feet tall. His body was pure muscle. His scales were black and red, like cooling lava. His claws were longer than human arms. His teeth were longer than human legs. He carried an energy blade that hummed with enough power to cut through starship armor. He was, without any doubt, the most dangerous-looking creature Elena had ever seen. Then he roared. The sound was supposed to shake the arena. It was supposed to make enemies freeze with terror. It was supposed to announce that death itself had arrived. Instead, it sounded exactly like a goat yodeling. Elena's eye twitched. Behind her, she heard someone make a choking sound. The Drachneth did not notice. He marched to the center of the arena, each step making the ground shake. He raised his energy blade above his head. He struck a pose that was meant to show his dominance, but his eyes were on the sides of his head. To look at the crowd, he had to turn sideways. He ended up standing in profile like he was posing for a painting. A very angry painting. A painting that wanted to kill everyone who looked at it. But still a painting. "The Drachneth Slayer will now demonstrate his combat techniques," the Supreme Arbiter announced. "Watch carefully, humans. This is what real warriors look like." The Drachneth began his demonstration. He was fast. He was strong. His blade cut through training dummies like they were made of paper. His movements were precise and deadly. His fighting style was aggressive slapping. Elena watched in disbelief. The greatest warrior in the galaxy fought by slapping things. Yes, his slaps could cut through metal. Yes, his slaps could break bones. But they were still slaps. Open-handed, side-to-side slaps. Like someone trying to wake up a friend who had fallen asleep at a party. The demonstration ended. The crowd cheered. The Supreme Arbiter looked down at the humans with satisfaction. "Well," he asked, "what do you think of our champion?" Elena opened her mouth to give a diplomatic answer. But before she could speak, Sergeant Major Okonkwo stepped forward. "Very impressive," Okonkwo said. "He is clearly very strong. But I was wondering, would it be possible to spar with him?" The arena went silent. The Supreme Arbiter's throat sac inflated slightly. "You wish to fight the Drachneth Slayer?" "Just a friendly match, for cultural exchange." I want to understand his techniques better. Every alien in the arena turned to look at Okonkwo. He was big for a human, but next to the Drachneth, he looked like a child. He had no armor. He had no weapons. He had nothing but his uniform and his smile. The Supreme Arbiter made a sound that might have been a laugh. Very well, human. If you wish to be humiliated, we will allow it. But do not blame us when you are broken. Okonkwo walked down to the arena floor. He stood across from the Drachneth Slayer. The giant creature looked at him with what might have been confusion. In thousands of years, no one had ever volunteered to fight him. The bell rang. The Drachneth charged. He moved like a freight train. His blades swung in a wide arc that could have cut a car in half. Okonkwo stepped to the side. The blade missed by inches. The Drachneth stumbled past him, carried by his own momentum. Before he could turn around, Okonkwo grabbed his arm. One quick movement, one shift of weight, and the greatest warrior in the galaxy was lying on his back. The arena was silent. The Drachneth jumped up, confused and angry. He swung again. Okonkwo ducked. He swung a third time. Okonkwo redirected the blow and used the Drachneth's own force to flip him over. This time, Okonkwo followed him down. He wrapped his legs around the Drachneth's body. He locked his arm around the creature's neck. In 3 seconds, the fight was over. The Drachneth tapped the ground. In every fighting culture in the galaxy, this meant surrender. The greatest warrior in the known universe had been defeated in less than a minute. Okonkwo let go and helped the Drachneth stand up. The giant creature looked at him with something that might have been shock. No one had ever beaten him. No one had ever come close. "Good effort, big guy," Okonkwo said cheerfully. "You have got a solid base, really strong. Just need to work on your hip movement, and maybe try some grappling. The slapping thing is impressive, but it leaves you open." The Drachneth made a sound. It was small and confused. It sounded exactly like a squeaky toy being stepped on. Then Okonkwo did something that shocked the galaxy even more than winning the fight. He patted the Drachneth on the shoulder. "Do not feel bad," he said. "You almost had me a couple times. Want to practice together later? I can show you some techniques." The Drachneth Slayer, the most feared fighter in the galaxy, nodded slowly. He did not know what was happening. But the humans seemed nice, and maybe learning new things would not be so bad. Up in his box, the Supreme Arbiter was frozen. His throat sac was fully inflated, which meant he was either very angry or very confused. Probably both. The human delegation began to clap. They were not mocking anyone. They were genuinely impressed. The Drachneth was clearly very skilled. The fight had been exciting. This was the kind of thing they would tell their grandchildren about. The aliens did not understand. Humans were supposed to be afraid. Humans were supposed to be humbled. Instead, they were clapping politely and chatting with each other like they were at a sporting event. Elena stepped forward. "That was wonderful," she said to the Supreme Arbiter. "Thank you for this demonstration. Your warrior is truly impressive. Sergeant Major Okonkwo will be talking about this for years." The Supreme Arbiter stared at her. His small brain was trying to process what had just happened. The greatest warrior in the galaxy had been defeated, and the humans were thanking him for the experience. "You are not afraid," he said slowly. Elena smiled her most diplomatic smile. "We are very impressed, Supreme Arbiter. This has been a valuable cultural exchange." The Supreme Arbiter looked at his advisors. They looked back at him. None of them knew what to do. In 10,000 years, no species had ever reacted this way. Every other civilization had shown proper fear. Every other civilization had understood their place. But these humans just kept smiling and clapping and treating everything like entertainment. Something was wrong. Something was very, very wrong. The Supreme Arbiter decided that an emergency meeting was needed. The council would gather. They would discuss the human problem. They would figure out what was happening. He did not know that things were about to get much worse. The emergency session began at midnight station time. Every representative of the Galactic Council gathered in the Great Chamber. The doors were sealed, the windows were covered. Guards stood at every entrance. This was serious business. This was about survival. The Supreme Arbiter stood at his podium and looked out at the assembled delegates. 1,700 species, thousands of planets, 10,000 years of galactic civilization, and all of it was facing a threat that no one had expected. "They laughed at us," Vrexthalominus said. His voice was quiet, which made it even more disturbing. They laughed at the sacred greeting. A murmur ran through the chamber. The sacred greeting was ancient. It was holy. No species had ever laughed at it before. That is not all, the Supreme Arbiter continued. They defeated the Drachneth Slayer in combat, and then they patted him, like a pet. They told him he had a good base and offered to teach him new moves. The murmur grew louder. Several delegates began speaking at once. The Glorvian representative stood up. They pointed at our sacred armor, he said. His voice shook with emotion. One of them pointed at the symbols of our warrior ancestors and made a strange sound. His face turned red. Water came from his eyes. It was as if the sight of our traditions caused him physical pain. A Kethmari delegate floated forward. They asked about our psychic auras. One human wanted to know if we could change the colors on purpose. She asked if we could make them match her outfit. More voices joined in. Every delegation had a story. The Thrall reported that humans kept looking down at them and making sounds with their mouths pressed together. The Virexians said that humans seemed unable to look at their four crossed arms without their faces doing strange things. The Dramini complained that a human had asked if their pink spikes were natural or if they could choose different colors. The Supreme Arbiter raised his hand for silence. The chamber slowly grew quiet. We must understand what we are dealing with, he said. Intelligence Division, present your findings. A small alien with 6 eyes and 12 arms stepped forward. She was the head of Galactic Intelligence. She had spent her entire life studying new species and predicting their behavior. Nothing had prepared her for humans. We have analyzed their history, she began. Her voice was flat with shock. What we found is disturbing. She activated a holographic display. Images of Earth appeared. Cities, farms, factories, ordinary things. Humans evolved on a world that tried to kill them constantly. Predators, disease, weather, other humans. Their planet is so dangerous that they call it a death world. And yet they survived. They did not just survive. They thrived. The display changed. Now it showed humans throughout history, fighting, building, exploring, dying in large numbers, and then continuing anyway. They developed something called comedy, the intelligence chief continued. It is an art form dedicated to finding absurdity in everything. They mock their leaders, they mock their failures, they mock death itself. Nothing is sacred to them. Nothing is too important to laugh at. The display showed examples. Late-night television hosts making fun of presidents, stand-up comedians talking about funerals, internet videos of humans falling down and hurting themselves while other humans laughed. They even mock themselves, the intelligence chief said. They have competitions to see who can insult themselves the hardest. They call it self-deprecating humor. They consider it a sign of strength. The chamber was completely silent. This was madness. No civilization could function like this. How could anyone take anything seriously if they were always laughing? But that is not the worst part, the intelligence chief said. We accessed their internal communications, the reports they sent back to Earth about us. She hesitated. Her 6 eyes blinked rapidly. This was clearly difficult for her. Read them, the Supreme Arbiter ordered. The intelligence chief took a deep breath. Then she began to read. Report from Ambassador Vasquez. The Supreme Arbiter resembles what would happen if a penguin and a bullfrog had a baby and gave it a law degree. The Supreme Arbiter's throat sac inflated so fast that several nearby delegates jumped back. Report from Lieutenant Chen. The Glorvian armor aesthetic can best be described as bath time meets battle time. I do not know who decided to cover everything in rubber ducks, but I want to shake their hand. The Glorvian representative made a sound of outrage. Report from Dr. Yamamoto. The Kethmari psychic presence registers on human instruments as mild tingles, similar to when your foot falls asleep. One crew member described it as slightly less scary than a haunted house at a children's amusement park. The Kethmari delegates flickered with angry colors. Report from Ensign Petrova. The Drachneth fighting style appears to be based entirely on aggressive slapping. I am not sure if this is meant to be intimidating or if they are just trying to wake up their opponents. Either way, it is adorable. The intelligence chief paused. The chamber was vibrating with outrage and confusion. Overall threat assessment, she continued. Dangerous? Absolutely. Their combat abilities far exceed what we expected from a species at their technological level. Ridiculous, immeasurably. We recommend taking them seriously while also accepting that we will be laughing about this for generations. She put down her report. That is what they think of us. They find us funny, not in a mean way, not in a cruel way. They genuinely think we are amusing. And the worst part is, she looked at the Supreme Arbiter with something like despair. They might be right. The chamber erupted. Delegates shouted at each other. Some demanded war. Some demanded exile. Some demanded that humans be banned from the galaxy forever. The Supreme Arbiter sat in silence. His small brain was working very hard. For 10,000 years, the Galactic Council had ruled through fear and respect. They had created rituals and symbols designed to intimidate. They had built their entire civilization around being taken seriously. And then humans arrived. Humans who looked at the sacred greeting and saw a party dance. Humans who looked at ancient armor and saw bath toys. Humans who fought the greatest warrior in the galaxy and then offered to give him tips. The Supreme Arbiter realized something terrible. The humans were not wrong. He thought about the sacred greeting. He had performed it thousands of times. He had never questioned it. But now, seeing it through human eyes, he understood. It did look silly. The arm flapping, the spinning, the clucking. It looked exactly like a chicken dance. He thought about his own species, the waddling, the throat sacks, the short arms. He had always been told these were signs of power and dignity. But were they? Or had everyone just agreed to pretend? He thought about the Drakneth Slayer, the aggressive slapping, the yodeling roars, the sideways posing. Was that really intimidating? Or was it just what they had always done because no one had ever been strong enough to question it? The humans had not been rude. They had not been cruel. They had just seen the truth. And now, looking around the chamber at the rubber ducks and the mood rings and the pink spikes and the tiny officials standing on platforms, the Supreme Arbiter saw it too. The galaxy was ridiculous. He did not know whether to be angry or impressed. He did not know what to do next. He only knew that everything was about to change. Because once you start seeing the absurdity, you cannot unsee it. And the humans had made everyone look. Ambassador Elena Vasquez was summoned to the Great Chamber the next morning. She walked alone through the massive doors. The entire Galactic Council watched her enter. 1,700 species. Thousands of eyes. Complete silence. Elena had faced difficult situations before. She had negotiated hostage releases. She had talked down angry generals. She had survived 3 divorces. But this was different. This was the fate of her entire species. She stopped in the center of the chamber. The Supreme Arbiter looked down at her from his elevated platform. His throat sac was not inflated. His expression was unreadable. The silence stretched on. Ambassador Vasquez, the Supreme Arbiter finally said, "Do you know why you are here?" Elena considered lying. She considered pretending that everything was normal. But something told her that honesty was the better choice. "Yes," she said. "You found out we think you are funny." A gasp went through the chamber. Several delegates made sounds of outrage. But the Supreme Arbiter raised his hand, and everyone went quiet. "You admit it," he said. His voice was calm. Too calm. "I do," Elena said. "And I want to explain something, if you will let me." The Supreme Arbiter tilted his head. "Speak." Elena took a deep breath. She had been thinking about this all night. She had practiced different speeches. But now, standing in front of the most powerful governing body in the galaxy, she threw all of that away. She just told the truth. "You are ridiculous," she said. "Your greeting looks like a party dance. Your armor is covered in bath toys. Your greatest warrior fights by slapping and sounds like a yodeling goat. Your leader waddles like a penguin and has a name that translates to he who flatulates thunder." More gasps, more outrage. But Elena kept going. "But here's the thing. We are ridiculous too. Humans are ridiculous. Our leaders say stupid things. Our traditions are weird. We spent thousands of years killing each other over which invisible being we should pray to. We put pineapple on pizza and then argue about whether it should be allowed. We jump out of perfectly good airplanes for fun. She spread her arms wide. Every species is ridiculous. Every civilization has things that seem normal to them, but look crazy to outsiders. The difference is, humans figured that out. We learned to laugh at ourselves. We learned that taking yourself too seriously is the fastest way to become miserable. The chamber was quiet now. Not angry quiet, curious quiet. You have conquered stars, Elena continued. You have built wonders we cannot even imagine. You created a government that manages 1,000 planets without falling apart. Do you know how insane that is? We cannot even agree on the temperature of an office. You are incredible. Truly, genuinely incredible. She pointed at the Supreme Arbiter. But you are also kind of goofy, and that is okay. Being goofy does not make you less powerful. Being funny does not make you less impressive. You can be both. You can be a terrifying galactic superpower and also a group of waddling, squeaking, rubber duck-wearing goofballs. Elena lowered her hand and smiled. So here is what I am proposing. Stop trying to scare us. It is not working. Instead, laugh with us. Let us find the funny together. Because I promise you, once you stop worrying about being dignified all the time, you will be a lot happier. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small device. We brought something, a gift, human entertainment archives, movies, television, stand-up comedy, millions of hours of us making fun of ourselves and each other. She activated the device. A hologram appeared showing clips of human comedy, people slipping on banana peels, politicians saying embarrassing things, children doing silly dances, grown adults in superhero costumes at conventions. This is what humans do, Elena said. We find the absurd in everything. We laugh at the universe, we laugh at ourselves, and then we keep going. That is how we survived. Our planet tried to kill us every day and we made it a joke. She looked up at the Supreme Arbiter. I think you have been taking yourselves too seriously for too long. I think that is exhausting. And I think deep down, you might want permission to stop. The chamber was completely silent. Every alien was staring at the human entertainment clips. They watched people fall down. They watched comedians mock their own species. They watched a video of a cat wearing a hat and looking annoyed. Then something happened that had never happened in the Great Chamber before. Someone laughed. It came from the Kethmari section. A small, strange sound. Alien, unpracticed, but unmistakably a laugh. The Kethmari delegate was watching a video of a human walking into a glass door, and something about it had broken through 10,000 years of serious behavior. More laughter followed. A Glorvian made a honking sound that might have been amusement. A Threll squeaked with delight at a video of humans tripping over their own feet. Even the Drachneth Slayer, standing guard at the door, made that squeaky toy sound when he saw a human try to do a flip and fail spectacularly. The Supreme Arbiter watched his council fall apart. Delegates who had never smiled were now making strange noises. Species who had been enemies for centuries were sharing screens and pointing at funny videos together. He looked at Elena. She was smiling at him, not mockingly, not cruelly, just warmly, like she was sharing a secret. You did this on purpose, he said. Maybe, Elena admitted, but I also meant everything I said. You really are impressive, and you really are kind of goofy. Both things can be true. The Supreme Arbiter was quiet for a long moment. Then slowly, his throat sac inflated, but not with anger, with something else. He laughed. It was a strange sound. It came out like a mixture of a honk and a burp. It was not elegant, it was not dignified, but it was real. 10,000 years, he said when he could speak again. 10,000 years of trying to be taken seriously, and you humans show up and destroy it in 2 days. Elena shrugged. We are good at that. The Supreme Arbiter shook his head. Then he made a decision. Very well, he said. Humanity is accepted into the Galactic Council, but we have a condition. Name it. You must share your comedy writers. The Glorvians want to try something called slapstick. I am told I have good timing for something called a straight man. Whatever that means. Elena grinned. I think we can arrange that. 1 year later, the galaxy was a different place. The Glorvian homeworld produced the first interstellar comedy holodrama. It became the most watched show in 9 star systems. The Drakneth Slayer retired from fighting and became a physical comedian. It turned out that aggressive slapping was very funny when done on purpose. The Supreme Arbiter hosted a late-night talk show. He interviewed leaders from across the galaxy and made gentle fun of everyone, including himself. His ratings were astronomical. His throat sac became famous for inflating at exactly the right moment for a punchline. The sacred greeting was not abandoned, but it was changed. Now it was done with everyone laughing together. A celebration of silliness instead of a demand for submission. And humanity? Humans became the most popular species in the galaxy, not because they were powerful, not because they were scary, but because they had given the universe something it did not know it needed: permission to laugh. At the 10-year anniversary of First Contact, the Supreme Arbiter gave a speech. He stood before the entire council, all 1,700 species, and looked out at them with his bullfrog face and his penguin body and his ridiculous name. Before the humans came, he said, we ruled through fear. We demanded respect. We pretended to be something we were not. He paused and let his throat sack inflate just a little for comedic effect. Then the humans showed up and laughed at us, and we realized something important. Dignity is not about looking impressive. Dignity is about being honest about who you are. Even the silly parts, especially the silly parts. He looked at Elena, who was sitting in the front row with her crew. She waved at him. He waved back with his short little arm. So thank you, humans. Thank you for teaching us that the universe is funny. Thank you for showing us that it is okay to laugh. And thank you for reminding us that the most powerful thing in the galaxy is not a weapon or a warship. He smiled his bullfrog smile. It is a really good joke. The chamber erupted in laughter. Every species, every delegate, every guard and assistant and maintenance worker. They laughed together as one galaxy, united by the simple human gift of finding joy in absurdity. And somewhere in that laughter, the universe itself seemed to chuckle. Because in the end, the humans had been right. Everything was kind of funny when you knew how to look.